Thank you so much. Morning, everyone. Let me just start with something that you all know, but with a different context. The 8 biggest billionaires in the world, and they own as much wealth as 50% of the bottom world's population. Turn to India, the 8 richest people in India. In India, you would have read the Wealth Research Report, which said that the top 1% of the country owns 58% of the wealth. You may wonder why I'm talking about this. We'll get to that in a minute. The first theme I'd like to lay before you is the world is changing and India is changing too. Half of India is now below 25 years of age, the millennials. Certainly for me, that's a new generation. When I think of millennials, I think of my children. They think differently, they act differently, they have different values. And that's, in my view, one of the first drivers to keep in mind for this business going forward. The second thing, 60% of Indians now have a bank account. Now, we may talk about the cash placement as a good or a bad thing. That's not what I'm going to get into. But certainly it surfaced the fact that a lot of Indians are now using formal payment systems and are using electronic methods rather than cash for transacting. Again, in my view, another driver for this industry going forward. The third is disposable income is going up. We expect to see an increase in taxpayers as a result of more and more money coming into the formal system. But also as the economy has grown, you can argue about the growth rates, you can argue about what the impact of demonetization will be, but incomes are going up in India. But unfortunately, so is the consumption mindset. And that's one of the biggest challenges we've got, where people want to spend rather than save and invest. I had a very interesting conversation with an RJ, radio jockey, right? These guys make good money. They paid 25, 30, 40,000 rupees a month. And I was doing a radio talk show with him, and I asked him, where do you invest? Forget investing, he hadn't talked about saving. And finally, preference for financial assets is emerging. And we've seen that over the course of the last year. So one of the big drivers, I think, or the first of the big drivers I want to leave for you to think about is that India is changing in a big way. The other big driver for our industry, we don't like it, but is regulation. And I think the more things change, the more things stay the same. By that I mean that the change in regulation and development of regulations is a constant, even though the regulations themselves keep changing. We are a very highly regulated industry, right? There is a lot of regulation. India is a very young mutual fund market. We've been around as a mutual fund industry for 25 years. The US, the industry has been around somewhere between 80 and 90 years. Yet, if you look at the level of regulation that we've got on this industry in India, it's not very far away from the best regulations that you've got in the world. To me, that's a reality. Regulation will continue to exist and will continue to be a highly regulated industry going forward. The other big debate, advisory versus distribution, is another trend and driver for this industry. And you'll see I've used the word versus there. I use it very, very consciously because unfortunately, today's conversation and today's debate is on two sides. Is it advisory or is it distribution? And I'm using those terms as they've been broadly defined and understood today. And again, I have a contrarian view to that, saying I don't think it's one or the other. And I think both models have to exist in a market like India, which is underpenetrated, has relatively low levels of financial literacy, and where I think the opportunity set is massive. All of us here in this room largely talk to the taxpayer today. That's who we're going after, right? And there's a much bigger world out there than the taxpayer. In addition to that, we only talk to that part of the taxpayer's money which is discretionary saving, because we don't manage their retirement assets today as a part of this industry in a big way. It's emerging, NPS has come in, PF money is starting to come into mutual funds, but we don't really advise or manage a large part of that money. So we're really managing only discretionary assets. The third thing we heard about technology. I'll run through some of this quickly because you know it. You know we've got plenty of Aadhaar and mobile phones. We're the second largest smartphone market in the world. What's interesting is most of us access the internet on our mobile phone, not on a desktop. Technology. So let's forget about Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram and Twitter. How many of you use WhatsApp in your daily business? It's turned into the communication tool to replace email in a massive way. And I see that trend continuing to grow. And data analytics. In India, we're lucky. We have a lot of data to understand our clients' behavior. And so far, I think the use of data has been limited in the industry, largely to asset managers in some ways. And we use it in portfolio, client behavior, what they're doing online, etc. I think the big move on technology and data analytics in future will come when we start to mine our data to help you do your business. And I think that's a change that's coming in the future. And you've got the Jandan Aadhaar mobile Trinity. And I think this is one of the biggest drivers of this business going forward. So if we go back to what I said, we manage discretionary money. We only access the taxpayer base. And I said there was a massive opportunity, and that's where I see the massive opportunity. Today, the technology exists for you to reach an individual anywhere in the country through his Aadhaar number, complete his KYC online using an OTP, originate his transaction, collect his money, and be able to completely give him all the information he wants on his mobile phone. Right? That technology exists today in parts and in pieces. It's not been integrated into one single ecosystem that's easy to use. Yes, there's lots of implementation challenges with things like CKYC. There are some steps to be walked still, but in my view, this Trinity is going to significantly drive the ability to access a completely new client base that we've not even gone after today at a low cost and in an effective manner. So my question is, are we relevant in today's world? It's a question I'd like to lay for all of you. If you just look at what I laid before you, we're changing as a country, regulations are a given, technology is changing. Are we relevant in today's world? Today, when we have conversations with clients, we talk about performance, we talk about portfolios, we talk about goals, we talk about retirement, we talk about education, we talk about wealth building. But who is the customer really? What is the customer talking about? The customer is a millennial. The millennial has a short-term mindset. When we go and talk to a 25, 27, 28-year-old customer for the first time about investing, he is not thinking about education for his children. He's not thinking about retirement. He's not thinking about buying a house. We heard Rajesh say that what he was thinking about at the age of 25 is how will I repay my home loan, my education loan. He wasn't thinking about building for the future. But our conversations are all centered around outperformance, alpha, XIRR, information ratio, portfolio construction, asset allocation, and goals that don't mean anything to the customer that we're talking to. So that's the first insight I'd like to leave with you. When you talk about the middle-aged, when you talk about people like myself, yes, now we're starting to think about saving for our children, saving for education, retirement, marriage. This is the point of time at which those conversations become relevant. But we have the same conversation many times with all of our customers. And then when you get to retirement, you really are talking about decumulation. You're talking about how can I have a retirement corpus that will last me through my 20 or 30 years because my life expectancy is increasing. I want to preserve my wealth and I want to create an income stream for myself during my retirement. So the question I'd ask you is, are we having the conversations in the context of the customer, or are we having the conversations in the context of what we know and what we understand as an industry? So I use the term know your customer, and I don't mean it to say KYC. I don't mean it to say collect his application form with his ID and collect his passport and collect his telephone bill. I mean it to say know your customer's context and tailor your conversations to what the customer is interested in and what the customer understands, not the conversation that we quite often have today in the context that we understand it. And you'll notice here that I'm recognizing that there is that, sort of top of the line wealth management customer who has very different needs, and they actually understand the conversation that we're having today. And there is a place to service that customer as well in terms of their complex needs. Tax planning, estate planning, asset allocation, overseas investing, all of it exists. But it's not the conversation that every customer understands in the industry. Now I've suddenly switched you over to Mercedes-Benz. So now you're wondering what I'm doing because I've suddenly got you a logo of an iconic brand in the world which has nothing to do with financial services other than the fact that they offer loans for cars, right? But indulge me for a moment and join me in watching a very brief video. The volume?
From the line and replacing them with humans. How come? The answer's simpler than you might have expected. Marcus Schaefer, the automaker's head of production, told Bloomberg robots can't deal with the degree of individualization and the many variants that we have today. So basically, humans are more versatile, which makes sense when you think about it. Robots are programmed to do very specific tasks, especially ones that work on assembly lines. If something unexpected comes up, it's not likely the machine will be able to adapt to the circumstance. Now think about the way new car purchases are made. Buyers pick a model. Sometimes there will be different trims to choose from, as well as things like color, wheels, extra packages, and in Mercedes' case, there are a whole lot of options. This comes shortly after the International Federation of Robotics released a report saying 1.3 million robots will start service jobs across the globe by 2018. It's not clear if the group accounted for Mercedes' more human touch. Though, to be fair, Mercedes will still be adding robots to the line. They'll just be designed to be more flexible and they'll work with humans rather than replacing them. For Newsy, I'm Leah Becerra.
Thank you. So, technology, humans. We just heard, Robos can't deal with the degree of individualization that exists in cars today. So my question to you is, could Robos possibly deal with the degree of individualization and context and emotion that we have to deal with in our industry today with our clients by themselves? I think technology is a great enabler. We heard Rajesh and other speakers talk to you about using technology. I agree with them. Technology can be very useful in a number of fields. Transactions, tracking goals, communicating with your clients, WhatsApp, email, even reaching new clients. I talked about the Jan Dhan Aadhaar mobile Trinity. Even reaching new clients. And it can lower your cost. But I think the human touch is a critical part of what we do. And to me, the most important points up there are 3 and 4. Avoid behavioral mistakes and build relationships. For all of you, you know very well how difficult it is to go out and sell the first SIP to the customer who's never experienced a mutual fund. He has a myriad questions. He's got 100 questions for you about what is a mutual fund, what is an SIP, why should I invest, so on and so forth, before he takes the step across that, and I'll call it the Lakshman Rekha, to actually start investing in a mutual fund or a financial services product. In my view, yes, we've got brilliant technology, brilliant robos, make it very easy, one fingerprint, you can do everything. But a robot cannot get up from its computer, walk across the line, hold your hand and bring you back. And when you're in turbulent times, it can't again come into your house, have a cup of coffee with you and tell you, don't worry, it'll be fine. And that's what people need when they're investing. Remember, I said we're talking about discretionary savings that people have in order for some life goals for them. This isn't buying a car or anything else, right? It's money and it's very personal and it's emotional and it's in context. So we always talk about technology versus humans. In my view, the future is going to be technology with humans. And that handshake, in my view, is going to be very important. So, I just want to leave you with some key takeaways. First, the world is changing and so must you. Regulations are a given. And I've listed there some of the big regulations. When each one of these regulations came up, whether it was the entry load ban or the direct share class or the commission disclosure, we believed this industry would end. We believed advisors would not flourish. We believed it was the end of the world for some period of time. Since that time, look at where the industry is reached today. 17.83 lakh crores as of today is the number, right? All of you have grown, this industry has grown despite regulation. And I have a lot of confidence in the ingenuity and entrepreneurship of all of you sitting in this room to build your businesses despite whatever regulations may throw at you. Third, know your customer, and to me this is very, very important. Know your customer's context and speak to them in their language, not in your language. So tailor your conversations. Technology is your friend. Shake hands with technology. Use technology to build your businesses and make life easier for you. And finally, demonstrate your value. I'm a firm believer in the concept of advisor alpha. We heard in a previous conversation that alpha is disappearing. I'm not sure I believe that. We'll see what happens when we get 7 years out. But I believe there is truly advisor alpha to be had. And I think if you can do these things, if you can adopt technology, tailor your conversations and demonstrate your value, I see no reason for the growth of this profession not continuing.